What's up, Internet? Card Games United here. You want to tell them about what we're doing today?
Well, we are going to be doing a sort of podcast on the biggest disappointments, I guess, from G-Era. Which is interesting because I guess while we sort of got a negative sort of tone in our last podcast about how G-Era basically power corrupted the game to the point where there was a point of no return. G-Era still, for me, was a lot of fun. And probably really the era of Vanguard where I got maybe the most competitive into it.
I think this is a good topic because what G-Era did was it made a lot of things like very, very powerful and very explosive. And just so no matter what deck you like to play, there was a good chance that at some point that deck got something that was just crazy good, like out of your dreams.
There's also times where like the meta was really diverse too, like the set 11 and 12 meta.
Yeah.
That one was fun.
But then every now and again there were those decks that came out that just fell on their face.
Yeah, like they were hyped up a lot, and people thought they were going to be amazing, but then it just turns out the way they were designed kind of limited their potential a lot and what they could do.
We don't really have a formalized list. I'm going to try and keep us to like at least numbered ones, but we'll see how it goes.
I mean, I do have one in mind that I've always wanted.
I also have one definitely in mind, and then I guess we'll just riff for the last four. Mm-hmm. So, without further ado, number one!
Number one, it's going to be Blue Waves.
Right.
This deck frustrated me to no end, because I think when Valios was revealed in the anime, a lot of us thought that this would be a deck that could compete, that this would be a deck that would essentially knock Thavas off his perch. Even though kind of the Tetra Boil, Anger Boil combo was still the best Aquaforce deck, but that this would be the deck that would propel Aquaforce back to the top.
That is one of the reasons this deck disappointed me specifically, because I remember playing Tetra Boil, Anger Boil, and like it sort of fell off later in its lifespan, but early on it was a good solid competitive deck that you could hang in there with. Mm-hmm. And so they say Blue Waves is getting support again, and it's like, okay, I'll bring that deck back.
And Valios was revealed as an apostle, and with the way that we know that Bushiroad is certainly very anime-centric on the way that they support their cards, we're thinking that this is going to be the
This is going to be the big windfall for Blue Wave. It's going to happen for them. But unfortunately, well, there are good things to talk about with the Blue Wave support. They did get a few notable cards that really help propel the deck. Like Flood Hazard was sort of exactly what they wanted in a stride. It really worked with the combo engines already in the deck. But outside of that, I think like their grade 1 lineup got a little more robust.
The grade 2s were disappointing though.
There was that grade 2 that could attack from the back row. That was pretty good.
That was okay. That was okay, but it certainly isn't able to deal with the control matchup as well as Thavas did. And there's a couple, I think, things to talk about with Blue Wave. First is that Valios himself turned out not to be as impressive as
Valios was the big falling point.
Because we thought that after the anime that this would work with any stride. Turns out there are two things wrong with the stride skill. One, you have to Soul Blast a name with a card with Blue Wave in its name, which is just so bad for resource management in general, because then it influences the way that you have to build the deck. Now you have to cut back on Tidal Assaults, who's an amazing card, or maybe you can't run that Battle Siren Chorus that works well with the deck, or you have to cut back on Stride Fodders, because you don't want to be riding these things.
There's also very much the chance built into him that he ends up being vanilla.
Yeah.
If your opponent doesn't have a way to boost their power, then he doesn't do anything until your next turn. And then on your next turn, he's very much reliant on what's in your hand and what field presence you have available to actually make an impact in the game. So, yes, Aquaforce players were clamoring for something like that for something like this for a while, but I think it's a case of be careful what you wish for, because just having that as your boss was such a sticking point that it just ended up being, whatever.
And I also think that a lot of the issue is that Blue Wave has always had this issue where they're so restricted among their archetype. Like, there are cards that require Blue Wave counterblasts The grade 2 that we got, that we thought was so amazing because it could restand 3 times, and it was like, well, he requires a discard, has to be a blue wave card, which is just so annoying.
And discarding for 2 9k attacks is a great idea in mid-game.
Yeah, or like... The card only really actually got a benefit because it was decent in a Link Joker matchup, that's it.
It was just there for the control matchup, and that there is something to be said for... Blue Waves does do a little bit better against control.
Still not great, but...
And also, Thavas just kind of says, hey, my entire deck has resist, so who cares?
And I think that was the other issue as to why Blue Wave was kind of disappointing was because we all thought that Thavas wasn't getting any support, but then they revealed the Thavas support, which, while it wasn't much, it was great support.
And Alexandros pretty much works best with him.
Even Megiddo.
That's another thing. Alexandros, and I guess to a lesser extent Megiddo, were so revolutionary for Aquaforce, but they don't really work with anything in the Blue Wave.
Because you're so wave restricted, so the things that you call from the drops, you're not getting as many restanders as, say, what you could be getting in Thavas. Or, the Alexandros has honestly become kind of vanilla too, because unless if you're running Tidal Assault, which you'd be running in Thavas anyways, it'll also be kind of a vanilla turn because not really everything kind of synergizes with its wave timings. I mean, I guess you may have Foivus, but I don't know, just for me the deck kind of being restricted among its own archetype limited a lot of its potential.
Alright. Well, to keep this video from being entirely about Blue Waves, I believe it's time to move on to number 2. My disappointment. Seal Dragons.
Ha! They got some support in, like, BT13?
No. We got, like, 2-3 waves of support in G-Series. They all fell down dead. I loved Seal Dragons when it first came out. Seal Dragons were the thing that got me into Kagero.
Do you have a Seal Dragon deck still?
I do still have a Seal Dragon
deck.
That's
gotta be one you play.
I wish it was one I could play, but just everything... I kept after set 11, because I joined Kagero set 11... Played Seal Dragons, absolutely loved it. There was a lot of technical play in it. You had to really work to know exactly which targets to hit, to know when to hit them, and when you're going to be at too much risk of them calling out, say, a Blaster Blade or something like that that can have an effect when it hits the board. You have to know how to remove their engine pieces strategically. And just as we got into the game more and the game became more aggressive, that style of play just immediately went out the window.
I think they also kind of suffered from, like, the Toshiki Kai effect, where Bushiroad kind of wanted to shaft Seal Dragons in the...
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely in the case of they wanted to focus on Blade Master.
Between set 11 and, like, I guess the last serious support they got was in, like... I don't think it was 13. I think it was before that.
I think they got maybe 1 or 2 cards in set 13. They got a grade 4.
The idea is we get a couple cards in the Fighter's Collection, and it looks like, okay, is it Seal Dragon's time again? No, these kind of suck.
No, they kind of want to push the new deck, which was Blade Master, then of course Overlord's got to get some
because we got Cross Origin and Hellfire Knight in the Fighter Collection, and it was like, okay, you can build the deck back up, and now you've got your Stride, and you've got a good power attacking rear guard. But just Cross Origin ended up being so, who cares? And, you know, Seal Dragon Knight was so expensive that the deck just didn't go anywhere off of that. And then we wait and we get a couple of, like, the card that can boost your power and unflip when your opponent calls a grade 2, which is pretty cool and pretty trollsy, but a single grade 1 does not run a deck. And in addition to that, we got Soul Blast 1 draw card, which... and then they have the gall to give us fucking Seersucker. He's such garbage. He's not even a boss. He lets your opponent call any grade 2.
Oh, was that the card that was released in set 13?
Yeah.
It doesn't even negate, like, the auto abilities, which of course they had a gift in.
And we got that single R-Stride that just stops Intercept. And it's like, what the hell is this for at this point in the game?
I think it just seems like they got power creeped and Bushiroad was willing to do nothing to sort of bring that archetype back.
Because they teased us. They teased us a good 2-3 times with support. But none of that support was ever good. And it was a crying shame. I miss Seal Dragons being good so much.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to get anything in V-Series.
You never know.
Because me was playing Nova Grappler. I'm going to be salty for a little while. Number 3.
Maelstrom.
In fairness to Maelstrom, it does have that cache of being like, it's the one thing that can stop all Guardians.
So, yeah, the problem was they didn't give the deck anything else that it needed, right? So for example, the idea that, Engulf can stop every form of guard possible also relies on the fact that you have to get those Maelstroms into the soul, which with the way the deck works is way too slow, and you'll probably be killed before that even happens. Because when we saw that grade 4, all of us in the grade 3, all of us were like, great, cool, so maybe we'll probably get a card that counts as Maelstrom in the soul, or something like that. Something to help speed the deck up. And for a while, if you looked on TCG, immediately when, Engulf and Lordly Maelstrom were revealed, prices for Maelstrom cards were going up. Mm-hmm. Because everything thought that Bouchard was finally going to bring them back.
The break ride spiked from $2 to $10 overnight.
Mm-hmm. And everyone thought that Bouchard was going to bring Maelstrom back to its former glory. But it just turns out that right after that, they decided that, if we're going to support Blue Waves and Thavas in the same set, then they're not going to get too many cards.
Aquaforce just got way too many different sets of support in that pack.
So Maelstrom had to be the one that got the shaft at the end. I mean, I guess Ildoramus is a pretty good grade 2, but
In fairness, we are right at the border of V-Series here, and we know Maelstrom's going to get support at the beginning of V-Series.
Which is unfortunate for me as a big Thavas fan, but I mean...
But at least you can abate a little bit of this specific disappointment, because it is coming back.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, just for me, with the deck kind of not even making any kind of competitive impact, at least Blue Wave had a couple tops at the beginning of its lifespan after set 13 support. But Maelstrom...
It even shows up on the occasional team, I think.
Yeah, because it is a highly aggressive deck. But Maelstrom... not aggressive enough in the early game to make much of a competitive impact, and just way too slow in mid to late game to really kind of get the full mileage out of Engulf Maelstrom. So, for me, that deck's a huge disappointment just because there was good support revealed early, only then for Bushiroad to just shaft it later. Number 4!
Chronofang.
Yes.
So Chronofang first gets revealed, and a lot of us Gear Chronicle players are looking at that like, cool, there's finally another Gear Chronicle archetype. Maybe they'll bring this one back to be more of the control style, and let Chronojet just go crazy with his multi-attack and all that. Or maybe this one will be like hardcore Time Leap, and Chronojet can sort of dip into a lot of things, something like that, to just differentiate them. What we really got was Chronofang just sort of getting a lot of effects that other decks already had, but requiring these weird bind restrictions that admittedly gave it its own flavor, but it's sort of like, hey, your flavor is wasabi tuna. Like, it requires a very specific person to like that. And then after that season with Ryuzu, it just never got like good support again. It got like Gear Glare, but yay, it does things your other grade 4 already did. And admittedly, like they thought Demiurge was going to be support for it, I guess, but no one ever played Demiurge with just Chronofang. Like, it didn't make sense.
Because you could just also make a deck with Ideodrome just dedicated to Demiurge.
And even at that point, that deck was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to wait a couple sets until the like really dedicated ZTB support came out. And then you could play just generic ZTB Demiurge.
Yeah,
and then... Because Demiurge did have his day in the sun. He did have a day of being like 1.5.
I think even in the set 12 meta, he was still actually played somewhat.
Yeah, he was a legit thing until they started really turning up the craziness.
I think Santana actually had a 4-3 finish with Demiurge at an ARG, which is not bad in the swept set 12 meta. Actually, no, that was when Rondo was released, so... Yeah, I mean, the deck could still do things, but then...
but then it wasn't a Chronofang deck anymore. Chronofang himself just didn't get the support it needed to really ever match up with Chronojet, and that's a big disappointment.
Kind of also just meant that Gear Chronicle in general just never did have a lot of, I guess, variety. Which actually that's something I thought about, was how the end of G series kind of, which could be listed on later. I kind of have an idea just for generically how G series might have been a little bit disappointing, or kind of limited deck choices within clans competitively, because.
Well, so the good thing about the Vanguard meta is it's always been diverse, and I kind of like a little bit of restriction therein, because if just everything is just, well, if you get the right triggers, you win, then the game just sort of turns into, well, let's hope I get the right triggers. Versus if you make some decks more competitive, there's actually value to being a player and knowing, okay, this is what I need to build my deck to do to win, and this is how I need to execute. Versus just, well, I guess I'm gonna bring Robert and hope I double crit. But that's a discussion for another day. So, got anything for number 5?
Kind of have an idea. I don't know if you might agree with me about Big Belly.
Really?
Well, kind of mostly from hearing you talk about it, though. I mean, you did say that Big Belly get all the support they need except for unlock support. And that
okay,
if it was...
so I will modify this one a little bit, and I'll say the unlock support. The unlock support is the disappointment, because they create this archetype of thing that the only argument it has for the health of the game is that it can help some of these decks come back versus something that could become toxic later. And then they don't give it to everything that needs it, first of all, and they stop G-Series right after, so you know you're not going to see Link Joker, and you're definitely not going to see the same form of Link Joker for a while. And so it just becomes, well, what was the point other than making these decks pick on Link Joker?
Which even then, kind of with the amount that it could lock from hand, it kind of just became a wash.
Because even going back to Big Belly, like, Big Belly is a good deck. It can still even compete today, despite the seriously crazy stuff that happened in set 14.
It's just that one Chaos matchup.
If you run up against Chaos, you just sit there like, well, guess these cards are vanilla.
Like, I mean, they just give them at least a crit that could unlock or something.
Yeah, I thought that was what they were going to do. They were going to give us the same thing Angel Feather got in set 14.
Yeah, it's like they gave Angel Feather unlock support, but then they couldn't give Big Belly.
The closest thing they gave us was gosh darn... Wait, we can swear on this channel. Yeah. They gave us goddamn Sankalpa. An extra 4K is not the same as an unlock. I'm so mildly angry at this bit because there aren't really a lot of like Joker players around me.
I think the only one we know is Kyle, but that's it.
Well, Sam also plays Messiah, but yeah.
Well, I think Messiah,
and also technically you with deleters, but that never locks.
I think I lock you on Igor. That's it. On the one Igor.
Oh no, my back row.
But I mean, in terms of like, I guess the truly oppressive like Chaos matchup, I don't know. That just is the one thing I guess holding Big Belly back from being able to be like, this is a deck I could realistically bring to regionals. I mean,
you could still logistically bring it. You just have to hope to get that roll that you don't run into the Chaos players, which is always a little bit of an anxiety when you go to a tournament.
I guess we have one or two that come to locals.
Oh yeah, also Raleigh plays Link Joker.
I think Chaos is his only deck. I mean, Kyle does have one, but I think he has a lot of other decks that he likes to play.
Anyway, enough about people the internet doesn't know.
Next disappointment.
Number 6. Geese.
Yeah.
It is such a boring deck. I was so pumped when I opened the Geese pack. You can go back and watch that. I was going like, freaking yeah, this is awesome, yeah! And then I play Geese and it's like, oh, yay.
The problem is the mechanic just sucks. it's a boring mechanic. It's one that just relies on luck. There's no fun or strategy to it. It's either you hit the triggers or don't hit the triggers.
It was always destined to be a meme, but I was very much surprised by how boring a meme it is. Because I run tons of meme decks. I'm just gonna turn to my left for a second. Let's see. Oracle OTT, Machining Mega Colony. There's the Geese deck. Spike Brothers, Hellheart 8. There's Meme Chronicle, if you want to know what that's about. There's a match with it. Oh, and hey, there's my Seal Dragons. DP, Defensive Narukami, which was a thing I tried to do for a little while. Blade Wings, regular Narukami. I love me a good meme. But that...
I think I honestly fell asleep when I was watching the match you and Sam had with Geese.
As did I. It
was just so
takes
boring.
40 minutes of just, well, I guess I'll eat this hit. Well, I guess I'll try to guard through this turn, and if I do, I automatically win.
Attacker's rearguard, so my opponent can't play.
Yeah, like Glendios in his time had a bit of that, just non-interactivity to him, but at least, there were workarounds. You could try to be aggressive enough and try to crit him through the 5 damage. But Geese just sits there like, I'm gonna happen eventually. Kill me faster or don't.
It's basically like you either kill me before I can ever get those triggers, or I'm just gonna come out.
Or I auto-win. Enjoy that. Go home.
It was just such a poorly designed concept by Bushiroad. They were doing a good job of making the game less luck reliant and less reliant on triggers, and then they go and introduce Geese, which is literally the most luck based, I guess, mechanic out there.
I honestly think there are ways they could have done it which would have been a lot of fun. If they'd made him open to control, you can pop off the Zeroth and you don't have to, have the 5 and then go into him. And it's just a system of okay, I have to play by trying to keep all my Zeroths on board, and you have to try to retire my Zeroths, and we're gonna have this back and forth, and
or
that would
actually the Zeroths.
Or dominate the Zeroths, and I'm just well, I'm sitting on something, and you're attacking me for 40,000 with a crit. Great.
Or delete Geese. That would have been fun. But
for Geese to be fun, it would have had to A, come out faster, B, be less trigger reliant, and C, be more interactive. But it's totally not interactive, it's totally trigger reliant, and it takes forever.
I guess the most fun thing about Geese is the deck building, cracking the code of what's the best deck to work with Geese.
But even then, we've got all the Japanese results, and they're just oh, no, it's no seal. It's totally no seal. Don't bother.
I guess you tried Blaster Geese.
I tried Blaster Geese, and that's at least interesting for a few seconds.
Or Angel Feather Gavriel Geese, but I mean...
in fairness, that was just straight paint by the numbers. Does this have rescue on it? Okay, slap it in the deck.
I guess there's only really...
The people I feel bad for is if anyone was out there with just maybe a couple Zeroth Dragons, and then Geese comes out and that's their big incentive to buy the rest of them. I feel bad for that guy because it's even if you're getting wins with it, it's not fun.
Geese mirror match I think might be the most boring thing ever to exist. Even worse than the Exodia mirror match or something. I don't know. There are fun mirror matches, and then there's the Geese mirror match.
There are wacky mirror matches?
I guess New Batamba Geese would be kind of fun, but then you wouldn't be running for Geese.
Because that's an entirely separate meme.
But I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe the existence of Geese is a good reason as to why the game is getting rebooted, but...
Not even. It's a tier 2 deck-ish.
Oh, well.
So, that was our list of the biggest disappointments in G-Era.
We hope you listened to Bushi Road. Now don't make the reboot disappointing.
Okay, this one was a little bit more of a downer topic, whereas we usually like to be all zany and crazy and hey, that thing's amazing. But you know, I think it's a good to step back and look at the things that disappointed us, just so we can take time to look at the things that impressed us and be like, man, that was good. And this is why that was good, because it didn't end up like that other thing.
Vanguard's not a perfect card game, so we as a community, we do have to be able to identify, hey, things that might be wrong with the game. You know, because...
Thing number one, Nubatama.
Our locals are actually getting swathed with Nubatama now.
Well, in fairness, it's just such an easy deck for someone to be like, okay, I want to join the game. Which deck should I pick up? Okay, here's this deck that's absolute top of the tier list, and it costs like, I don't know, $150 maybe.
Nah, Carlos built his for $80. I'm not gonna lie.
There you go.
Well, actually, $160 because he bought Drachma. But...
Yeah, so you can easily build that deck under $200, and it's
also just not a very skilled one. Sorry about that, you two, but like it. There's...
If the skill required for your deck is reading the name Rakudo, wait, it's not even Rakudo. Evil... I guess I can't play it. Evil Eye, Vatia Emperor, Shiranui Rine. That's all the skill that's required saying that.
Yeah, literally all the deck is make sure that you call your things that have timings with when a dominant unit attacks, blah blah blah. Make sure they're on the board first.
And then, just Rine. Just Rine them to death. There you go. Have fun.
I guess there's number 7 was that Nubatama actually became this deck that
Well, yeah, I'm definitely willing to throw that on as a honorary number 7, because I was playing Nubatama from set 13 with Kabuki Kongo and Kuchikiri Kongo, and like if you go back to Final Turn Carlos's channel, there's a deck profile of my Yozakura Kongo build, and if you watch that, I'm getting pretty hyped just because that was a fun deck to play.
Yeah, Afterimage seemed like, even I think in G Series with the original Shiranui and Afterimage, that actually seemed like a pretty fun deck to actually play. It was gimmicky.
Well, because Nubatama's always had this sort of degenerate playstyle of, I'm going to take your hand away from you and then kill you. But at least in the past variants, it was all about, working the correct timing and just figuring out when you can troll your opponent the hardest, versus... with Rene, you just sit down with the troll face already on.
Pretty much. I mean, I think the thing about Nubatama before set 14, I think even Domination actually was a deck that required skill to play, because you had to make decisions and weigh the game state as to are they at 3 or 4 damage, but they have a full field, so do you risk going into Mugen Lord and they may hit a trigger that may make your turn essentially vanilla, or do you try to play a little bit of the long game and just go into Murkrow? And these were the kinds of decisions that were involved with playing Domination, but then set 14 came in and it was just like, here's this card that literally in every situation possible,
also,
there's no reason.
Domination did originally have that bonus of being in just that butter zone of good but not oppressive.
Yeah, it was a fair and balanced deck.
Whereas now the deck, like, we like to mention, because I really do think it's true, the meta is fairly open, but Nubatama is very oppressive. Like, there's a lot of things that just, like... I tried to play Battle Sisters at our locals last week. I ran into Nubatama twice, and just...
Carlos was one of them. I don't know how. I mean, I think I got the one against Nubatama with Davos. I don't know how. I think it literally just happened that every freaking Alexandros had a crit that I just put in a restander.
I got destroyed.
But I mean, the deck kind of just went from something that actually required that had a lot of interesting ways you could build Nubatama decks, a lot of variety in it, towards something that kind of just became, you just run cookie cutter domination, that's what you're going to do, you're going to go into Rene all the time, and you're going to win. Very little thought that goes into playing that deck, very easy to pilot. Just a bit of a disappointment.
Like even with the other dark regulars with Bellam and Aquaforce with Thava, specifically with Alexandros, it's still not that bad to be another deck facing it, but just because if you have a way around their playstyle, if just that specific type of aggression isn't that damaging to you or your deck, you'll still do perfectly fine. But Renee just has the essence of just, well, I shit on everyone. Enjoy that.
Except for, like, I guess some Bermuda decks. But...
So, the idea that it's just so universally oppressive, because even though it did get things that were good enough to compete with it, like, if it were just dark or regular, you'd still have marginal decks that were unaffected by that because they could keep themselves at low damage, or they could really easily G-guard.
How even blasters have that combination where they could just perfect guard for no
perfect
PG.
guard with their G-guard. Yeah, that you'd have things like that would still crop up and still be just like, yeah, this deck's really strong, but the way it plays just doesn't affect me that bad.
I mean, I guess
versus Nubatama just looks at every single other deck possible, and it's like, well, I can kill you because that's the thing I do.
I guess technically there do exist some interesting counters to Renee. You have things like Live Rotten Brave, but then it's also Brave, so they lose 2 cards out of their hand, which they probably needed. Or I guess Bermuda Triangles, I guess, have Citron, and ZTB has Rafana that could call over dominant units, but that's still taking a G-Guard out of your hands just to do that. So Renee is still accomplishing what Renee wants to do, which is why it's still oppressive.
Alright, so that was our top 6 disappointments with an extra rant about Nubatama at the end. This one was a little bit of a downer, sorry about that. But thanks for hanging out and listening to us. Your lucky number today is e to the pi I plus 1. I just proved there's a god. Ah! Oh wait, Nubatama. There is no god. Peace!